From Louis Kahn's essay on knowledge, it is not how much you learn that is important, but how much you honor the position of learning in what you are doing. You must know to feel your intuition, but you must not trust your knowing as something that can be imparted to someone else. You transfer your knowing into the work you do, and that is your best character. A previous paper presented at the Communicating by Design conference describes a series of design exercises that migrate between analog and digital techniques. Inspired by jazz improvisation, this project is a mixture between design and research with no actual division. The work is a call and response condition where actions are followed by thought. Moving beyond bebop requires intensive self-observation, discussion, and reflection. This paper presents an internalized dialogue between teaching and design research, between music and architecture, and between analog and digital. These insights are reinvested into future design projects. Improvisation is at the heart of creativity. The deep, intense moment of observation is critical for decision-making, requiring a higher level of consciousness. I must develop an accurate eye for when and where to make specific improvisational shifts. This process is sensitive to the internal logic of a system. I make decisions on the strength of sophisticated intuition. The process starts with the emotional, but must be taken through stages of refinement and development. I must move at a speed where my hand intelligence is close to my head intelligence. Rapid iteration builds dexterity and technique. I don't want to invest too much time in a single precious idea. By generating multiple iterations, I select and combine different ideas. To refine decision-making, I must practice, make mistakes, and reflect on the results. Thus, developing an idea is a process of discovery. It is important to critically discuss the design research in relation to teaching because most of the ideas and methods originally came out of teaching. I have taught design studios involving jazz music 20 times, spanning a 25-year period, both in undergraduate and graduate programs at 5 different schools. The 4th-year optional studio I taught in 1998 at the University of Colorado at Boulder produced work that had a significant influence on my bebop project. The level of improvisation and invention was memorable. I have used the best work produced as exemplars for subsequent jazz studios. In almost every jazz studio, the process begins with an analysis of the underlying structural components of a jazz performance. This is followed by an interpretive analysis involving musical instruments. The analytic phase culminates in a series of drawing improvisations. The procedures and vocabularies discovered act as generators for an architectural project. In fall 1999, I taught the same studio at Roger Williams University. This studio was mostly a disaster, leading to my first serious reevaluation. The students protested that I should work on the assignment myself before they did it. After thinking about it, I decided to work on the exercise as a possible motivator. I presented this work to the students. In response to my gesture, only 1 team out of 5 was willing to suspend their disbelief. In a subsequent teaching evaluation, the dean stated, "The structured method employed required an extensive buy-in among the students. Ultimately, it's the students' work, not your project." A fruitful idea emerged from this. In January 2000, I determined that I should begin my own design project and leave the students out. The bebop project started without music. Initially, it was entitled Order and Variations on a Theme. Immediately, it was a rational game of constants and variables. An iterative process of improvisation and evolution was developed. It was a cause and effect play between logic and intuition. By 2003, the official title of the project changed to bebop spaces. The project has always avoided literal interpretations of music. Ultimately, I'm interested in how to make it up as I creatively respond to what I have done and develop from it. The process generates a formal and spatial complexity that attempts to exceed my initial expectations. During the Music and Architecture, Architecture and Music Symposium, I observed that the architects understood more about music as listeners than the musicians knew about architecture as observers. The musicians had a layman's understanding of architecture as a discipline. The architecture was subservient to the music, treated as a container or backdrop. One of the dangers of using music as a generator for architecture, especially in studios, is that it becomes predictably literal as an idea of mimicking the emotions and simplistic motifs of the music. I have experienced numerous shifts between analog and digital cultures. In 1979, I constructed axonometric drawings as an analog for the physical model. Recently, interfaces for three-dimensional software have improved, allowing for increased dexterity. The new interface makes a major difference in my accessibility. I can think, draw, and make design decisions within the software. I am quickly approaching a level of agility, fluidity, and speed that exceeds the two-dimensional experiments seen in the Bebop Spaces project. In 2007, I designed and built 2 laser-constructed models. In 2010, I taught an advanced graduate jazz studio based on this work. The students produced the work in 2-person teams, which led to forced combinations. In the end, it was agreed that everyone should have produced more laser-cut studies based on singular compositions. So in 2011, the studio worked with a similar process, but we shifted the focus away from any references to jazz and did not have a building program. Students worked individually. This studio constructed a series of complex three-dimensional improvisations that were among the most inventive spatial structures I had seen in any of my jazz-based studios. The challenge for students to avoid literal preconceptions and take control of their process as a directed form of research has proven difficult. When a jazz studio was successful, it usually meant that there was a unique core of advanced students willing to suspend their disbelief, trust me, trust the process, and trust their own sense of discovery. Buy-in, peer influence, motivation, and critical mass are important, but in addition, you must have critical engagement. I discovered that my teaching exercises are more valuable for my own design project. As a conscious strategy, I have experienced the project through the students as a testing ground. This is a specific way of thinking about the role of drawing, modeling, tools, and techniques in a creative design process. I am building cranes that build cranes.